the bottom of your screen. Let's introduce tonight's guest. Sesali Bowen is a writer known for her elevated pop culture correspondence. She is the former senior entertainment editor at Nylon magazine and senior entertainment writer at Refinery 29. Bowen is one of the architects that helped launch Unbothered, R29's sub-brand for Black women. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times and Feministing, and she hosts Purse First, a podcast about female and queer rappers. And she will be in conversation with myself this evening. All right, let's get into this talk. So before we actually jump into the book, let's just lay out what trap feminism is for those who might not know.
Oh my goodness, that's always the most overwhelming question for me because, you know, trap feminism is obviously a lot of things and it has evolved since like the 10 years that I first conceived it. But I would say, I think today, you know, especially like on the other side of publishing this book and things like that, I think trap feminism is first and foremost feminism for real bitches. I think if you identify as a real bitch, you know what I mean. But I think, you know, for me, it represents a feminist framework that works for the most marginalized Black women. So especially Black women who are quote unquote from the hood, Black women who are poor, and I think Black women who are a part of, you know, what I like to affectionately call like the bad bitch generation, which is the group of Black women who kind of came up in the era of trap music and where a lot of our conceptualizations of what it even meant to be a Black woman have been in conversation with the way gender and sexuality are talked about within the framework of trap music and trap culture. And so trap feminism is really, in the same way that hip hop feminism was, trap feminism is really a framework that seeks to uplift and define what liberation is for them girls.
Right. I think it also reflects in your chapter titles, because when I picked up this book and there was bad bitches only,
period,
real bitches,
exactly,
my bitches, which is one of my favorite chapters of the book. Can you talk about how you decided to break down the chapters and, sorry, just looking down at my notes, and why you decided to put in the book what you did? Because since you've laid out trap feminism in the sense of like, this is something you've created and I followed you for years, so I can attest to seeing that you are the one who coined this phrase. What process did you have to go through to kind of narrow down what you were going to talk about in this first book?
So I think each chapter is essentially me outlining a principle of trap feminism itself. And so, I guess I should say maybe like a principle or a theme. And so I think for me, it was, obviously my book is also part memoir. So it was like, what are the stories of myself that I need to really tell to get people to understand where I'm coming from with trap feminism, but also just like, what is really necessary in order to like practice trap feminism, right? To actually live it and to actually have it. And so as I was just reflecting on like what had helped me to come to this framework, it essentially ended up being, you know, my friends, my ability to like work within and outside of the law. It was my relationship to money. It was my relationship to sex. A lot of it had to do with sexuality, because I think that that's where Black women find themselves kind of policed and critiqued the most. And so it just made sense as I was kind of fleshing that out. And then there were other concepts. So for example, writing about sex work, that was something that was really important to my experience and to my life. But really the reason why it was so important for me to put in the book is because I noticed that there is this kind of cultural obsession with sex workers, while also at the same time, this very strong stigma and this very shaming that gets directed at sex workers, especially Black sex workers. And so I think in moments like that too, I knew that I had to include stuff like that prominently, because trap feminism does deal with the complexities of Black womanhood. And it forces us to look closer at the things that we may have been told to just write off, or that we are told not to sit with and not to examine, that we're just supposed to kind of accept. And so I think that for me, like that was kind of the process of deciding like what was going to be in the book. Yeah.
All right, well, let's just, since you mentioned sex work, let's just jump to your chapter, Selling It.
Selling It.
Which
it's also funny. It's funny to talk about these chapters now, because for those of you all who don't know, I also dropped a mixtape, and every song on the mixtape collaborates with or corresponds, I'm sorry, to its chapter. And so like sometimes when I'm saying these titles, I'm not thinking about the chapter at all, I'm thinking about the song. So it's streaming everywhere if y'all want to listen to it. But yes, okay, Selling It.
Yeah, I definitely think like you make a good point about like trap culture, and just I feel like American culture in general is obsessed with sex work. Mm-hmm. Either it's, you know, like the idealization of like strip club culture, or even, you know, to the point where we're trying to like demonize it and make laws against it. But I think the most important thing you pointed out was that so many intersections of discrimination happen in sex work. If you'd like to elaborate on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, sex work is an economy. You know, the sex industry is its own economy. It is in some ways an underground economy. Obviously, there are some above ground facets of it, but a lot of it happens underground, and a lot of it happens as a result of survival. Like people get into sex work for the same reason they take a job at Walmart, because mm-hmm. they probably need to make some money, and they understand that they are qualified to do that kind of labor and that kind of erotic labor. And so for me, you know, that was my experience. It literally was this perfect storm of circumstance where, one, I was broke as hell. No, I needed the money. I had a record. I had a criminal record at that time. So like I couldn't just go get a part-time job at Macy's. I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. I also knew that like I could perform sexually, if that makes sense. I could provide those types of services. And so in theory, like when we talk about like women being paid for their erotic labor, we actually hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, like I can think of so many lyrics where it's like, she sucked my dick so good I had to go buy her a Chanel bag, or I paid her rent, you know, like mm-hmm. That is a description of transactional sex, which is something that happens a lot, quite frequently. But I think when a Black girl just says, yeah, I'm a sex worker, like I sell coochie, like, you know what I mean? Like then there's a different reaction to it. And so for me, the differences in those reactions is that it's the issue with the ownership. The issue is with the ownership. It's with the ownership not only of like Black women's bodies, but also of Black women's stories. And so it means one thing for him to be able to talk about, to give some value to her body and her time and her services, but it's another thing for her to say that this is what my time and my body costs, you know?
Right.
And I think that was like I knew I needed to talk about that as well, because I also think sex work is considered one of those things that's like unproductive or like a type of failure. It was the chapter I was most afraid to write in terms of my family reading the book. My mama read it and she got to that chapter and it fucked her up. She didn't know, about that. But it's because of the stigma that is placed on it. But like so many people engage in transactional sex in one way or another at some point in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading your chapter, I thought about just some like personal incidents and stories where, you know, like people would admit, or like I had like a friend's mom kind of admit, like, yeah, I have hooked up to make sure my kids,
right,
so I had some money to eat. And it's way more common than we would think, but to sit there and, you know, to put it out there, or I am proud to see more Black women coming out saying like, I have engaged in sex work, or I have been a dominatrix, or in BDSM, right, to kind of get the stigma out there. I think the more that we have been talking about it, the more that we see it's like way more common.
Yeah.
And then even just kind of like how you mentioned in the book that it's, you know, there are enjoyable moments, but it's also risky.
Yeah.
I think about even Cardi B talking about when she had admitted to, you know, or I shouldn't say she had admitted, but that old Instagram or Twitter video where she had mentioned that she had, you know, told a guy that he could hook up with her for some money, and she really drugged him and robbed him.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people missed the mark on that, where they were just trying
yes.
to condemn her, right? But I was also like, we should be talking about how she's lucky to be alive to kind of tell the story.
right. Yeah. Because like, what would the alternative? How else could that have gone down? And I also, you know what? And what really frustrated me about that as well was that there was equating of what Cardi was doing with sexual assault.
Yes, there was a lot of,
and it was like, oh, yeah, well, you know, if you wouldn't want someone to rape you, like, why would she rob him? And right. I'm like, nothing in his wallet. That's not the same kind of crime as being violated against your will, like having your body violated. But also, the assumption was that he was going to give her that money anyway.
Yeah.
The issue is that he just didn't get the pussy he thought he was gonna get for it, you know, at the end. But no, I'm so glad you said that though, because like, yeah, like they really missed the mark in terms of what women have to do in order to survive, what kinds of instincts they have to have, mm-hmm. what kind of skill they have to have that is not limited to like what you can do with, you know, your body. And people don't understand it as an actual erotic labor, and as opposed to just like an exploitation of your own sexuality.
Yeah, I think also people miss the mark on this idea that you're just inherently good at sex. That
right,
learning how to not only to be attentive to somebody and to even please them sexually is actually work.
It's work.
Whether you want to you know, be paid for it or just have those skills in your personal use.
And anyone who's ever fucked someone when they really didn't feel like it knows that is true. You know that is true. Like, yeah, come on, y'all. Let's not be obtuse.
Right. And just kind of segue into that, since we kind of touched on crime, I was actually really also glad that you wrote about Black women engaging in, you know, in crime in the sense of survival, because that's something we don't talk about, and something I don't really think about even when I'm listening to a lot of trap music. I'm thankful now that like I have so many female rappers to actually listen to that I don't actually really have to engage with cis male rappers if I don't want to.
And child, it ain't a lot of cis male rappers out here worth listening to. The girls are watching them right now.
They are.
Truly, I have not been impressed. I have not been impressed with the offerings from these niggas for like the past 2 years. It's pretty much only been women on rotation for me.
But like from a feminist perspective, or like some of the feminist theory and thought I've read, I haven't read anything specifically just in general about women in crime, especially not Black women in crime. So if you wanted to talk about that a little bit more too, about your chapter of Run Me My Money, and maybe even dabble into your situation that you ran into in college.
Yeah. So it's so I wanted to, that was so important for me to talk about up front, because at first the chapter was like, I was like, how do I try to say that like I'm just a hood bitch? Like I was like, how do I say that? And I was like, well, what is it? You know, like kind of what I was really trying to like kind of quantify that. And the word that kept coming up for me was this idea around lawlessness, and kind of like, oh, like what, you know, what makes me a hood bitch is that I still think it's appropriate to slap the shit out of somebody sometimes. Like I still think that that is an appropriate response to how someone might be speaking to you or engaging, you know, or how a certain situation might be handled. You know, that is a that is a crime. That is a crime to be, you know, in depending on the circumstances, you know. And so I really wanted to, I was just like kind of reflecting on like, oh yeah, like so much of my life has been like towing the line just within the bounds of illegality or just being completely outside of it. But I think that one of the ways that Black women are consistently shamed, and I think especially hood Black women, it has a lot to do with this idea that we should be morally sound, that we should be more ethical. And so, you know, we can listen to these niggas talk about shooting people, robbing people, selling dope, you know, pimping, like literally human trafficking. Like we can, you know, listen to them talk about that all day. And it's like, yeah, we with all the shits we want to hear every verse. And when they go to jail, as soon as they come back out, we still gonna support them. Like it's nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to Black women, it's like, can't believe she would do that. Oh my God. It's like this, all of a sudden everybody is into respectability when it comes to women and when it comes to Black women in particular. And so it was important for me to outline, one, that like, that doesn't actually reflect the realities of the hood at all. Like Black women can be scammers just like these niggas can. They can sell dope and do just like these niggas can. They can, you know, they can do all these things just like these niggas can and do. They are feeding their families just like those guys are. They earn their stripes just like those guys do. And but I also think, you know, that was important for me to talk about because like I think that it's made me principled in a way that is different than people maybe who don't have that experience. But I also think it's an example of like radical anarchy, you know, like, mm-hmm. and then again, it's all of like what everyday acts of resistance happen outside of the law that actually like lend itself to people's survival. So for example, like when I lived in the projects, that was technically my aunt's apartment. She was the one who had housing vouchers to live in that apartment. And she was not supposed to have nobody else mm-hmm. living in there with her. That's technically against the law. She could have lost all her housing. She could have lost her food stamps, all of that, like all of these benefits that she was getting because like she made sure that me and my mom wasn't homeless, you know?
Right.
And so you have all these examples of people like existing outside of the law that, you know, just lend themselves to their survival. And I think me writing, it's funny because like me writing about being arrested was really actually to dive deep into what happens to people once they get into the system, just to like kind of dive deeper. I mean, me boosting, like it was a way for me to like, don't get me wrong, like it was definitely like I was stealing shit that I needed. I would steal stuff and sell it to get a little bit of money, but it wasn't like I really needed it. You know what I'm saying? It was more so just like because I could, and also because like I might need a pair of shoes more than Target needs this extra $30 that I might pay for the shoes if I didn't just steal them. But it was interesting just, you know, the different experiences that me and my friend had, like when we got arrested at the same time for this crime and what it meant to like kind of go through that system and how that one decision literally changed the trajectory of what else I was doing after that, because it was that arrest, right, that like is part of the reason why I had to do sex work, and is part of the reason why I had, like, you know, suddenly, like, whether or not I got a degree, like, a lot was hanging on that, because, like, I knew I had to have it in order to, like, get to where I wanted to be. Like, it was about how this one interaction with the criminal justice system for something so fucking small as stealing some stuff out of Nordstrom, right? A place where one item could cost more than what I had in that bag, right?
I was thinking about that as I was reading. I was like,
Nordstrom.
All that stuff is marked up and not even worth what they're selling it for.
You know? And so I'm like, you know, that one interaction and that one kind of like fateful day or decision like changed so much. And I was really happy to like put that into context, because then you see how it keeps coming up, like at later points in the book, you know, that the fact that I had a criminal record comes up at later points in the book, you know, versus that experience that I wrote about when I met a classmate a few years later who had gotten arrested for the same thing, and like had immediately gotten put in, this white girl had immediately gotten put into a diversion program, never had a record, never had anything, probably doesn't even think about it anymore. The end.
Right. And reading this book for the second time, it really hit me when you said they were trying to charge you with a felony, and like how serious that is. Like,
yeah, like I could have had a felony. Like, and it's and then, you know, and you think about that, it's like, because it, once you get into the system, like so much of it is about money, because it's like, can you afford a lawyer to get the charge knocked down from the felony to the misdemeanor? Can you afford the restitution? Can you afford, do you have the housing to, if you need to get out on some type of like I-bond or furlough? Do you need, you know, like everything suddenly becomes about like what resources are available to you. And so it was really, it was important for me to like take some time to sit with that and like really like flesh that out. Like literally from the experience of being booked and processed to the court date and being sentenced and, you know, all of that stuff. It was just wild. Yeah. I was like, sometimes I think about the fact that that was like 10 years ago. And to be honest, it's only because it's been 10 years that like, I'm able to kind of exist as if it didn't happen. Like I never got it expunged or anything. It's just literally been enough time where background checks don't even go that far back, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even like this chapter making me think about rap being even more of a like feasible career for women who have records. And I mean, we still don't even treat women, we still don't even treat women in the industry like with the same grace after a crime, like you pointed out with JT.
Right.
Think about the Gucci redemption story versus which I was totally wrapped up in. I was totally into
a wig cake in a suit so motherfucking fast.
Yes, I mean, I was totally into the Gucci. He eats kale now.
Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But really, like, versus somebody like Remy Ma, her career still has not come back fully the way it was before she got arrested. You know what I mean? Like she had to go like reality TV route.
She did. Yeah.
So
I mean, in her case, she was lucky to have a husband that, you know, married her in jail and is still, you know, totally supportive of her.
Yep.
So she's still almost an outlier in that sense.
Exactly. And it's also really interesting too, because, and I'm glad you brought up JT, because the other example that I write about in the book is with Cardi. And I think something that I've been talking about recently is this kind of sanitization that's happening with the rap girls. Like they're not letting the rap girls be rap girls. They like, okay, you can give us a mixtape and then maybe one album where you really doing your hood shit, but then like we need you to put this leotard on, we need you to learn this choreography, and we need you to start making some pop records for the white kids. And it's interesting to watch that happen, because essentially what they're trying to do is like scrub away like the remnants of like, you know, who they are, you know, especially for somebody like JT. Like Shorty just got out of jail. Like you expect for us to, like, she just got out of federal prison. Like we watched her go in there. We literally watched her walk into the jail. You know what I mean? So like now she's supposed to be like a pop princess. Like, and she can if she wants to, but like JT wanted to be a rapper. Like,
right. Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, making me think of Lotto.
Yeah. That's really still too upsetting for me. Like,
I mean,
because
yeah.
I hate the new song. I hate it.
And that is what the girls who have listened to her when she was called Mulatto are saying. And I agree. She, it's not giving Queen of the South energy, but very much still like
it's giving Queen of Malibu. It's giving WeHo. It's giving Calabasas.
It's like they want her to still be sexy, but then they put ladybugs on her breast. I don't. And making her dance.
It's almost to make her more childlike, to make her more, or not more childlike, to make her more child friendly.
Yes, but the
like,
song
I really see there's this really interesting thing. I think that, I think to be a pop star, you inherently have to appeal to young people. Mm-hmm. And I get that, but I do think it's weird because this is somebody who literally raps about how good and wet her pussy is all the time. Like, let's just slow down, y'all. I'm trying to like put her into kid-friendly clothing.
Right, I agree. Like, if you maybe watch the video with it on mute, you would think maybe this is more. Mm-hmm. Like, you would think like, oh, this could be a little pop, but it's also still, she's still talking about BDE.
right, exactly.
So it's like, who is the audience?
It's interesting how we expect for women to present themselves in order to exist into hip hop, which is why it was so important for me to write about being fat, because like I needed to immediately come in to like first reject the notion that I needed to look a certain way to even be able to speak on trap music in the first place.
Yeah, let's segue into that bad bitches only conversation, because you want people to not only stop calling you confident, but we have to stop acting like the Black community is not fat phobic.
Right. Yeah, like, oh my God. The confidence thing is so interesting because I think it is a way to avoid accountability for how we treat fat people poorly. So essentially, the ownership falls on them to love themselves enough to withstand the abuse that is hurled at us for daring to be fat. Okay. I don't think it has anything to do with how people perceive us to feel about ourselves. I think it has everything to do with how they perceive us and how they think we should be behaving or acting based on those perceptions. And so, yeah, it just comes off as very backhanded. We literally don't say that to anyone else. We only compliment people on confidence who we feel are lacking in some way, right? Like,
right.
You must be really confident because you look a fucking mess. That's really what people really are thinking in their head. Or like, you must be really confident because if I look like you, bitch, I would never show my face in public. That's what people mean when they say that. And so, but I think for me, like, confidence is not about, like, confidence does not involve some of the grandiosity that I think people associate with it. Because to me, confidence is literally just like loving yourself enough to think that you exist. Like, it doesn't mean that like you are somehow like existing on a higher plane. But I think that when I wrote the Bad Bitches Only chapter, it was, like I just said, important for me to like establish this book where I talked a lot about hip hop to first of all say that I rejected some of the body politics associated with that. But more than that, I think it was important to like force people to like really look around at that, like look at the women around them. Like, bitches be fat. Like, y'all mamas be fat. Y'all baby mamas be fat. Y'all managers, something. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all friends. Like, it's not like you can't erase us when we're right here. You know what I mean? And right. So I think it was just important for me to kick that off for those reasons, because I think also when you allow yourself to don't want to say I needed to like decenter, you know, the hip hop phenotype, like the bad bitch phenotype or whatever. But I just needed people to like, it was like a palate cleanser, if that makes sense. Like, this book is essentially about trap culture, trap music, and it's about Black women. And I needed for people to like let go of what they might visualize when they thought about those two concepts together before we talked about anything else. And I think that's why I started there.
Right. And then I think it's also good that you point out is like, yes, I like myself, but it doesn't stop people from discriminating against me because of my body. And that's important.
Right. Like that's the getcha gotcha of it, because it's like, yeah, I can like myself, and like that also doesn't change the reality of the fact that like fatphobia exists, but within and outside of our community. Here's some of the ways that it's looked for me, and it's still shitty, and like that's still your problem and not mine. It's some shit you need to work on, and it's not an issue of me needing to change my body in order for you to like respect me or think that I deserve to have all of the same shit that you do.
Right. And also, still on the conversation of confidence, you also point out that even a confident person can still get plastic surgery and want beauty rituals and routines. Can you go ahead and just, you know, I've again been a fan of your work. I've heard your ideas on plastic surgery, but I definitely think they differ from the latest conversations. You know, there was that photo floating around of all the women getting off the plane, apparently from the Dominican Republic, getting their bodies done. A lot of, oddly enough, shaming around that. Even the young baby Tate photo, people arguing, oh, she's fat, no, her clothes don't fit. And then I even saw a friend post like, oh, well, y'all just aren't used to natural bodies anymore. And it's like, you think you're helping the conversation, but that might be also a part of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting because first of all, there is a lot, literally, I don't know if you know this, the Shade Room is literally doing like, child, the Shade Room is doing like an investigative journalism piece on BBLs and the dangers of BBLs. And it's so fascinating because they have built their entire platform on following and posting bitches who have gotten BBLs and bitches, or at the very least, like bitches who look like that phototype, right? Of that prototype of people who have gotten those BBLs. And so it is really interesting to watch this flip-flop that's happening around plastic surgery, because the truth, if we're gonna be honest, the getcha gotcha is that like it's because normal everyday hood bitches have now found a way to go get their asses done like everybody else, and so now we think it's a problem. It's just like, this might be a terrible example, this is so specific, but I remember when Telfar announced that they were doing bag security for the first time, and the Telfar bags cost what they cost. They've always costed what they cost.
Right.
But there were so many people who were saying like, oh, the quality of this brand is gone down now because it was accessible to people.
Right.
And it's literally the same thing that's happening with plastic surgery. Plastic surgery is becoming more common. There is way more research that is available to people on who you can go to, how much it costs. Like there's literally an entire community, there are entire communities of women who support each other as they go through that process of getting plastic surgery. It's just more accessible. Like when I was growing up in high school, I didn't know nobody who was getting, it seemed like this thing that only white people did, and rich ones at that. Celebrities and rich white people. That was the only people that I thought got plastic surgery. And like, that wasn't true. That has never been true. But I do think that there's so much more information available about how to get things done, and also how to get it done for cheaper, how to get it done safer, how to get it done, how to, if you want to risk the safety, to get it done cheaper. You know, like there are options available to people, and people are taking advantage of those options. And like, unfortunately, like that's what bodily autonomy looks like. We make decisions like that with our bodies all the time. It's the difference between wearing some Wet n Wild lipstick and buying some Giorgio Armani lipstick or some, you know what I mean? Like it's there is always going to be, like, people get to make decisions about their body and people get to make decisions about what they want their bodies to look like. But the issue is that, like, we don't think that hood Black girls should have that type of power over what they look like. We want to be able to punish them for not looking the way we think they should look and rewarding them for looking the way we do think that they should look. But when they make that decision for us, we don't like that.
Right. I even think when we talk about getting bodies done, we're specifically talking about BBLs, which equal like Black women, or I guess like the Kim Kardashian, Kylie Jenner type, who are seen as, you know, copying the Black woman's body. You know, we're not, when we say, you know, criticizing people getting their bodies done, we're not talking about noses. We're not talking about even breast implants anymore, which was like you said, back in the day, it was like, oh, if somebody's getting plastic surgery, it's like, oh, they're white and they're getting their breasts done.
Yep. Or nose job. Those were literally the only two conceptualizations that I had of plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Like, and even the way, like, you know, it is interesting because even the way we talk about it, we've come up with, like, there's this whole language now that exists just to shame women for plastic surgery. Like, that bitch cut up. Mm-hmm. She, you know, she this and she, it's so weird. Like, it's so weird when, like, yeah, like, no one ever says anything when, like, I ain't heard nobody say nothing about Dolly Parton big ass titties. I never, not a one.
It just kind of accepted as who she is. It's like not even a conversation.
It's just accepted as who she is. Nobody says any. And to be honest, they're not gonna like to hear this. But you really see it in even the Black girls that we pick and choose to pick apart their plastic surgery, because, like, there are people who still want to swear up and down that Beyonce has not had any work done, when, like, baby, Beyonce has had a lot of work done, and Beyonce been getting work done for over a decade now. But, like, people don't like to equate that with her because they don't think it's respectable to get work done, but they think Beyonce is respectable. So then we see how it, like, fucks people up, because, like, we see how it fucks people up, and we see how it's not about the body, it's about our perception of the person and how we think they should exist in the world, and, like, what we think that they should or should not be doing with their bodies.
Right.
It's like, come on, y'all. Y'all know damn well. Come on, guys. You know?
This is also a good time in the program to make sure you're putting your comments, or your questions, I should say, in the Q&A box.
Yes, this is also a good time for me to, 40 minutes in, I have a cold in case y'all cannot hear it. So if I sound nasally, if I'm sniffling, I'm so sorry, y'all.
So I want to talk to you a little bit too about your writing process. There's so many things I want to talk to you about, but you mentioned how it wasn't easy to actually conceptualize trap feminism. You talked about that a little bit in the beginning when you were trying to define it. What made you decide to still write the book anyways, really?
Well, once I had written about trap feminism for the first time in Feministing, like, you know, I had that kind of like column there. But then when the thing that people have to realize about my writing career, and I do talk about this, but it's interesting to talk about it. I'm glad you asked that, because now I can frame it with trap feminism in particular. For people who know my story as a writer and know my journey as a writer, you know that I did not think that I was going to be a writer. You know that this is kind of a career that I finessed for myself. I've always identified as a writer. I always thought that I could. I always thought that I was a good writer and that I knew that I could put things together with words, but I didn't know any writers. I just didn't know what it would look like as a career path. So, like, my first career out of college, out of undergrad, like, I was working in politics. I was working in DC. You know, I thought I was going to be like a activist type bitch. I hated that. They don't pay enough. And then I went to grad school. And even when I went to grad school, I didn't know, like, I was going to be on a path to be a writer. by the time I had gotten that first job out of college, I had won a contest for Feminist thing called So You Think You Can Blog. That was just something I was doing for free. It was a hobby, essentially. So when I first wrote about trap feminism, I wrote about it in that context as like a hobby, as like, you know, this is an idea that I have for this really, it was granted, Feminist thing is like an OG feminist blog, may it rest in peace. But like, I was just like, yeah, like I'm gonna write about trap feminism for this blog because that's a place where it can live. That'll be cute. But then once I finished graduate school and realized that like, oh shit, now that I've built up all these clips for this site that people actually do read, like I could actually maybe be a writer. Let me go do that. And I've been writing about pop culture. Oh shit, now I'm an entertainment journalist. I stopped writing about trap feminism. I wasn't writing about it anymore. And that was for a couple of reasons. One was because I didn't feel like I couldn't figure out where it fit into what I was doing without having to completely reintroduce it, but also without completely reintroducing it, but also because I didn't want any of those outlets to own it. And so that's the thing about working for like those bigger places like Refinery 29 and Nylon. It's like when you come on to be a writer or an editor for them, essentially the things that you create under your time there belong to them and it becomes their IP. And so I kept trap feminism really close to the chest because it was mine. And I think also at that point, it was more of like a way of life for me. So I wasn't thinking about it as a framework. And it wasn't until I was approached with the idea of writing a book, when I was approached with the opportunity to like have a body of work that was mine, that I had ownership over, like that's when I knew that I could really like, okay, let's let the chopper sing on it. And so that was kind of like how I ended up writing this book and why I ended up writing this book. You know, like it literally just clicks. Like it was like I wasn't necessarily thinking about like, you know, it wasn't like trap feminism was like this theory that I was obsessed with and I was just waiting for the right moment. No, it was like my agent approached me about writing a book and was like, if you did write a book, what would you write about? And I was like, what would I write about? And then it was like, oh, that thing. And it came together like that.
Cool. And in your chapter, or the epilogue, I should say, of Real Bitches, can I tell you, I took it personal when the Black editor did not want to buy your book.
Baby.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
I have not. I've been so absorbed with gratitude and the love for people who have supported this book that I have not been petty yet and gone back to remember her name so I can go sneak and look at her Instagram to see if she read the book yet. But I am gonna do that because I am just curious. But I also, but the thing is too, like it's no shade to her because I also get it. Like, and that's really why I had to, you know, that I talk about that in the epilogue that like there are a lot of Black women for whom trap feminism does not apply. I work with them bitches. I, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know them. I know who they are. Those are the women that like Black women are expected to aspire to, you know, that those are the women that Black women are expected to like look at as a version of like Black excellence and Black womanhood. And in a lot of ways they are Black excellence and they are Black womanhood. Like it's no shade against them. But I also think that like I get to be Black and excellent, like with all the shit I got going on. And actually like I am, and because of who I am and because of what I went through. And despite what other people might say, we see when y'all continuously mine the culture of the hood girls. Everybody wears long weaves and colorful wigs and long ass nails, and everybody talk the way they do, and everybody use they phrases and they catch phrases and shit on the internet because like they got that shit from us. Like we have to do the shit first, and then somebody else imitates it, and then it becomes the culture. You get what I'm saying? Like, and so like it's no shade against them, but it's like I understood. I really did understand where she was coming from. And I think also we're in this moment where like, I saw a YouTube video and I wish I could remember the YouTuber, but it was like, basically like, I'm just regular Black, not Black with like the glitter emojis. Because that's what is happening right now, where it's like this aesthetic around Blackness and Black girl magic and like, you know, everybody wants to see like, you know, what the local version of Insecure is. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, like, that just wasn't for bitches. Like, it was just, I just did not see myself in none of that. And for me, like, I just think that, like, we were only honoring, like, hood Black girls in death.
Yeah.
And in when we stealing shit from them, you know, like what did I say, in mood boards, and on t-shirts, you know, like a girl like Breonna Taylor or Ma'Khia Bryant, like, we only know their names when they leave us, or you know, when they're in some other really tragic situation, like they making headlines because they've been arrested, or, you know, something like that. But, like, we play a very important part in, like, the conceptualization of what it means to be Black women. And, like, we deserve a framework to quantify some of that. And so I understand that it's not for everybody, and I think that's okay. Because, like, I think y'all got enough shit that's for y'all. My book don't also have to be for y'all.
That's why I took it personally. I understand I don't work in publishing. I've understood some of things, how it works, how it is a risk to put money behind a book and you don't necessarily know how it lands. But as someone who was looking for a book like yours years ago, like when I was in grad school, you know, I still think your book is such a great follow-up to Joan Morgan's When the Chicken Heads Come to Roost.
Yep.
And even thinking about Brittany Cooper with the Crunk Feminist Collective, like that is still like older millennials. And me and you are close in age. So like a lot of the references and stuff, like, and even in the past 5 years since I've been working at the bookstore, seeing more what I like to call Black girl memoirs. I just didn't get why like they wouldn't take a chance on it, because it seemed it may not be exactly like the other ones, and none of them are alike.
None of them are alike.
They might touch on the same stuff, but you know, none of them are alike. And I think that that's why I took it personally. I'm glad you're taking it much better than I did. Let me get into these audience questions. So you have a question from Joanna.
Hey, Joanna. Wait, is that Joanna Alpha?
I do not know, but
I think that's my old roommate. Okay, wait, what's the question?
All right. Thanks for being here tonight. Love reading your book and learning about trap feminism. During the editing process, what got taken out of your book that you still want to share? That's a good question too.
You know, actually, I can confidently say nothing. I do think that there is something that I would like to write more about Black girls and eating disorders, because I am a Black girl who has an eating disorder. I did a YouTube video about it not too long ago, but I was really like struggling to figure out where that fit into trap feminism. And there actually was a line in there where I mentioned my eating disorder, and my editor was like, this is really heavy. Like, you don't like, not like heavy as in like it would be like triggering, but literally like, this is new book territory. Like, you don't just throw some shit like that in. Like, let's you know, kind of take that out. And so I think that that's one thing, but I don't know if it's interesting, because I have not conceptualized that within like a trap feminist framework yet, except to say that like a lot of my early kind of body dysmorphia and body obsession definitely contributed to, you know, in this idea around, I think if I could put that in anywhere, it would be in the Bad Bitches Only chapter, because it does have a lot to do with this obsession over Black women's bodies, and how that obsession became something for me to hold on to. Like, I don't know, it's this very abstract concept, but it feels very concrete when you are like trying to exist within a marginalized body. It feels very concrete to like hold on to this obsession with like a body that is not yours, that you'll never have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. The next question.
Yeah, that was a good question. Nobody's asked me that yet. And wow. Yeah, that was a good question.
And there really aren't a lot of there aren't a lot of books on Black people with eating disorders. I can maybe name two. Next question, an anonymous attendee. I feel like 99% of the time I encounter female hip hop and rap artists in a highly stylized performative space, like music, television appearances, cameos, but are left out of a lot of music journalism, sit down interviews / podcasts, or other spaces where they can discuss their work. What can we do to address this, and where can we look for spaces where these artists are flourishing?
Okay, so funny you should ask or whatever, because I actually, so first and foremost, before I even plug, what you know I'm about to plug, that was actually very important for me when I was working at places like Nylon and Refinery 29, which are like women's media outlet, right? So they would cover, oh my God, like the amount of people that like wanted me to know who the fuck, not even Olivia Rodrigo, because she's like new, but it was just like, it would just be all these white women that I was just expected to know all the time. And I was like, no, I am listening to Megan Thee Stallion right now. Like that's who I'm listening to, and that's who I think actually we should be covering, because in a few years she's gonna be popping, and we're gonna be so like I would have to fight to write profiles like that. Like when I first got to profile Megan Thee Stallion for Refinery 29, like it was like months in the making of me like begging to get this profile written, and you know, begging for them to even just cover stuff that Cardi B was doing on social media or on Love and Hip Hop. Like, and now like when either of them sneezes, right? So I would suggest tapping into like Black women writers, because there are a lot of Black women writers and a lot of Black women journalists who are doing the work of like keeping us up on the girls, keeping us up on women in hip hop. But also, you should absolutely listen to Purse First, which is a podcast that is exclusively about like femme and queer rappers. Like the hosts, who are Pierre Phipps, who is one of the Freaky Boys, a legendary rap gay duo, and myself, Sesali. We only talk about female rap, queer rap. Like we don't talk about cis niggas at all. You can go listen to all of season 1 wherever podcasts are streamed, and you might be getting news about season 2 soon.
Oh, good. Put it back in my rotation. Yeah, I mean, that was a good question, because I mean, I think a lot of people might listen to Dissect. When I think of music podcasts, I think of Dissect, and Cole Kushner does his best. He did good with the Lemonade album, but I'm like, you've done 2 Kendrick albums, you've done 2 Kanye albums. Like, can we move on? All right, the next question. What can we do to push back against the X bodies can do everything that Y bodies can do, as an argument for respecting all bodies? Why is our culture still so obsessed with bodies being a monolith?
I don't think I understand the first part of that question, but I also just think that like as a culture that is inherently sexist, the way in which we create hierarchies around women almost always starts with their bodies and what they look like. That is always ground zero for how we are policing, for how we deal with like how women exist in the world. And so, you know, I think one of the ways that I push back on that is just by like doing what I do in this body, you know, and like living the way I live and having the standards that I have, and pursuing the dreams that I dream in this body that I have. And I think it's actually really important for like folks to do that. Like, just do the shit that you want to do in the body that you have. Don't do the shit that you think that you can do, or that you should be doing in the body that you have. Because also, like, I think I'm also like, this is something else that's really important to trap feminism. And this is also, so whoever asked this question, please don't take this the wrong way, because this is not like directed at you or anything. But I also think like, the thing that I like about trap feminism is that it examines how Black women have already been providing their own frameworks for liberation. One that is not obvious to the rest of the world, is one that doesn't have to be obvious to the rest of the world. We don't have to share that with the rest of the world. So like, we don't have to like to say that I'm a trap feminist doesn't mean that I have to like present a framework for like gender-based world peace to everybody. Like, I just know the shit that Black girls been doing to make it and be popping since forever. I remember I wrote about that in the money chapter because like I was like, I know that people are gonna have like, you know, are gonna like have questions about like, you know, my anti-capitalism and shit like that. And I'm like, look, you either know how to rob niggas or you don't. That's the only wealth distribution advice that I have. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, like I think that's the other thing too. Like I'm very comfortable feeling like I don't have to have the answers for everything. Like I just know what Black girls know, and I know that that's been working for us. And also in a lot of ways it hasn't, but like also not our problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like we have to get to a point where we have to realize that like we cannot stop, you know, like only rapists can stop rape, or only, you know, like only racists can stop racism. Like we have to stop asking the people who are on the receiving end of like violence and oppression for like the solutions.
All right, this one's next. Sesali, what writers or artists have been really influential to you?
Trina. Trina has been very influential to me. Toni Morrison has been very influential to me. Just because Toni Morrison wrote books, Toni Morrison edited books, she sold books. Like she really just was like a master of the craft of writing and creating and telling those kind of stories. And she was just very unapologetic about doing that shit for Black people. And I think that we can learn so much from that. I will also have to say Dr. Ruth Nicole Brown, who created like the academic canon of Black girlhood studies. Essentially, when she was in college, there were a lot of like girlhood studies was just becoming a thing. And she was like, oh, it's very white over here. Let's go ahead and start talking about Black girlhood. But she also really approached it from a non-interventionist perspective, and instead like a real celebration of like Black girlhood and like what it meant to be Black girls. And so yeah, those are my top three.
Awesome. From Andrea Hernandez, do you think you'll go back to a major editorial media platform?
Them people don't pay enough. Them people do not, I'm gonna be honest with you, them people don't pay enough. And like now, like places, everybody is like doing content now. No. You really would have to cut me a big check for me to be on somebody else's payroll for 40 hours a week. Like people don't understand that. Like when I was working at Refinery 29, like sometimes I would be responsible for like 3 articles a day.
That's a lot.
How unsustainable that is. Like,
yeah.
You like that's a lot. And then on top of like having to watch the shit to even be able to write something about it, having to go to the events, it was just a lot of time. And baby, I can tell you right now, when I left Refinery, I was making about I was making $61,000 a year. Absolutely not. When I left Nylon, where I was overseeing their editorial, when I was overseeing their entertainment vertical, still wasn't even hitting 6 figures. I wasn't even making 85. I think I was like right at 84. So like, I'm comfortable being transparent with that, about that, because I do think it's important for people to know, like, and don't get me wrong, like there are some, you know, like depending on how big the outlet is, like, you know, obviously the editor-in-chief of Vogue is, you know, gonna be making, you know, substantially more than that, you know, but it's like, it's just not worth it. I think it's also very limiting. Again, I think it comes down to like, when you work for an editorial platform, it's their voice that's important. I think the only exceptions that I would make, you know, would be one, if I did have a super high editorial role, and it would have to be a publication that's already aligned kind of with what my voice is. And like the truth is that, as we've seen, like a lot of these places just are not. A lot of these places, let's be honest, are for white women. A lot of these outlets are for white women. And so like, no, I'm not interested in like going back into that space and having to like fight to cover Black women, to like talk about Black women. Like there are other kinds of writing that I can do that make me a lot more money to like not write about shit that I'm passionate about. I mean, which really is what I've been doing this year. I've been copywriting this year. like for people who are curious. Like I've done like some editorial stuff, like as like a favor for like an editor friend, like pieces that I can just get off real quick. But like I've been making a lot of my money copywriting. Go to that. If you're a writer and you don't know how to get in and you want to know how to make some money, y'all better go on the advertising side, child. That's where the money was at, where the money was at, where the money was at, where the money was at.
No, it's good to know. And definitely thank you for sharing the numbers too. And this is a great question to end on. What do you want older Black people, especially older Black women, to learn from your book? It feels like a great way for Black women to have some intergenerational conversations. It feels like older Black women can learn a lot from the liberatory spirit of trapped feminism. And this was from Sherry Williams.
So, hi, Sherry. So it's so funny. I did an event in Chicago. So I did like a private release event in Brooklyn last Friday, and I did one in Chicago on Saturday for friends and family. And when I was leaving the one in Chicago, me and my homegirls was in the parking lot. They was in a blunt rotation. I was not, because I was smoking no more, but that's what they was doing. So we standing outside in the parking lot, they smoking. And next door to the place where I did my book release, they was having like a, it wasn't a stepper set. I was being sarcastic calling it a stepper set, but I don't think it was that. It was like an event of like comedy, dancing, music, but it was like an older crowd. Mm-hmm. And so these 3 women was leaving that function early because it was still going on with my shit ended. So they was leaving early. So they were parked next to where me and my homegirls was parked. And this one woman came out, you know, we was like, hey, how you doing? You know, because we respectful, we speak. And we were telling, we asking if she had a good time. And then, you know, I was like, oh, well, you know, I just did my book release. I just wrote my first book. And she was like, oh my God, like what? Like, you know, and I always have this moment, especially when older Black women ask me, like, I'd be real proud to tell them I wrote a book. I get real quiet when they ask me what it's about, okay? But because I know it's shit in that book that they gonna clutch their pearls about, right?
Right.
And so, but what happened was, she was like, oh my God, I know that's right. And before I could even really get into like showing her the book, like one of my friends like pulled the book out, showed it to her. She was like, cause you know what, that's one thing about y'all young girls. Y'all don't wait for no man to do shit. Y'all be about y'all motherfucking money. And like she kind of just went off. Like she went off on this tangent about how proud she was of this generation and how, you know, we didn't need like men for this and that, because in her generation they was just raised to like get married and find them a man, and like that was success. And like I was so humbled by that, to like humbled and affirmed, because the truth is that I ain't never aspired to do that shit, because I know it's not all that it's been cracked up to be. And I don't know if it's like, yeah, I want older Black women to read my book, because then I just feel like my auntie read my book. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's such a good question, because there is something there, because I do think that generation of women like really invested in a dream that was sold to them that they know was some bullshit. And I do think that they look at what younger women are doing and they like, damn, like, I mean, and granted, circumstances was different, right? Like we have more access, we have more opportunity, like we have, you know, the world is a little bit different where we can really go out and get the shit in the mud. And to be honest, a lot of like, with the way the world is going with social media, a lot of the careers now are centered around women. If you peep, that's why a lot of people like try to sneak this like influencers and like influencer culture. And it's because influencer work is inherently feminized. Like a lot of it has to do with like being a beauty or fashion person, or like, you know, like pay attention to how people be talking about this stuff. But it's like, because we have these careers that women can do good at and are like really like making a lot of fucking money at.
I was about to say making a lot of money.
They make a lot. I mean, a lot. Like, baby, these influencers, child, I want to be an influencer so bad, but I don't have it in me. I don't know what it is. I can't do it. But it's just, I do think that like that generational recognizes these opportunities and recognize like how our values are changing because we have the opportunities, right? Like you really do move through the world differently when you know you don't need no nigga. Like, period. You know, like that just is what it is. Like, that's why women like Trina were so iconic to me in the 90s. Like, you know, because like some people like to fixate on Trina saying she'll like fuck 5 or 6 best friends, but like, no, baby, I was fixating on when she said, don't grow to be a dumb hoe, save up, buy a condo. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, there was a syllabus. There was a syllabus that was put forth for us to read. And so I hope that the nieces talk to their aunties about the book. I don't know that I hope that the aunties read the book, but I hope that the nieces is out here talking to their aunties about the book. And I hope that y'all are encouraging them to leave y'all trifling ass uncles. Period. I'm gonna leave it there. Period.
Yes, that is a great note to end this event on. If you haven't already, buy Bad Fat Black Girl Notes from a Trap Feminist. The purchase link is in the chat. You can pick it up from P&P. Sesali, thank you for doing this event with us. And definitely,
also, y'all, please stream Notes from a Trap Feminist, the mixtape.
Yes,
by
I listened to it.
Black Girl, who is me.
It's good.
Available on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever, all streaming platforms. So, but no, Morgan, thank you so much. Y'all, me and Morgan have been following each other online for so long. I couldn't think of anybody else to have this conversation with. So I'm so happy that we did this.
Oh, thank you. You're making me blush. I would also like to thank our audience. Thank you for tuning in. We couldn't do these events without you all tuning in and purchasing from the bookstore. And on that note, I wish everybody a great Friday night.
Thank y'all.